Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right, my third week in Taiwan. I packed rather lightly for this trip, and I noticed an interesting side effect of not having all my stuff with me. Staying in a hostel, actually. And let's face it, even though Taiwan is a lot more friendly than the United States, conflict happens between myself and my roommates, just like it did between myself and my roommates when I'm living in an apartment in Phoenix, Arizona. The interesting thing is that without having a lot of stuff, I find that the rational part of my brain actually lights up because I'm not worried about having to move out, right? I get into a disagreement with one of the roommates, or when I tried to first moved in, the owners started to bullshit about service fee or something like that. I could actually use the rational part of my brain because I'm not afraid of not being able to live here. I'm not afraid of being having to walk out the door and go down two streets to go look for another hostel. Now I didn't have to resort to that, but the option of that in the back of my mind was very important to have. Now, contrast that with 4 months ago when I left an apartment in a hurry. What had happened was my roommate, he and I had different lifestyles. He owned the place. The other thing that worked against me was that he already had two roommates who he had had for at least 5 years each. And every time we would get into a disagreement, I would worry about having to move out. I had a bunch of art projects that were I was in the middle of fragile stuff. I was teaching at a community college, a lot of papers, and so just a lot of comings and goings. You know, the next day I might have needed to work with the students on something and didn't want interruption to that, right? And so all of that caused the rational part of my brain to not function at its full capacity. And this is something I'm going to have to think about when I go back home because obviously I'm going to be living with roommates for the foreseeable future. And I'm going to clean up my storage locker. I threw everything in there on a number of occasions because for a time I was living out of my car. Every time I needed to use the car for something, I needed to carpool with somebody or I needed to pick up a date, everything just flew into my storage unit without much consideration. But having my experiences this month, I want to clean that up so that I can keep most of my things neatly in there so that when I negotiate with potential roommates and landlords, I won't be put in a pigeonhole because that's what destroyed me. And that's what allowed this trip to be so beautiful. The other thing I noticed is that, and this one's kind of related to that, I have a lot of hidden stressors at home that I can't even identify. And I know this. I love my job at the community college. Can't really say there's much I dislike about it, but one thing I've noticed is that ever since my vacation, I've been eating a whole lot better. I've been sleeping a whole lot better. In fact, I sleep without even thinking about it. I can't remember a time I tossed and turned in the bed. In fact, sometimes I want to stay up later because there's stuff I want to do, and I can't. And also, without even thinking about it, I've gone 32 days without masturbating. Most days I do an intermittent fast. Lately, I've been doing 18, 19, 20 plus hours, sometimes a full 24 hours, without even thinking about it. It just comes. Something at home is stressing me out to the point that none of these things come easy. The only thing I've been abusing here is caffeine. I really love the tea here. We got some really good tea. I've been drinking upwards of 2 grams of caffeine a day, unfortunately. But you know what? That's a small price to pay for all the other health goals that I've hit. Especially the not masturbating. I need it because not masturbating apparently does some powerful things to our body in relation to how attractive we are. The other thing I've noticed, and this one ties to it, is that we don't really have a whole lot of time in our lives. So I was kind of abusing myself when I was at home. That's the only reason I had all the time in the world to get involved in bad relationships and to do all the wackiness, right? But if you want to get enough sleep, you really don't have a whole lot of time. I've been kind of disappointed how little time I have for not only the vacation here, but my art projects, right? And I can only choose between one of them, right? Uh, so I'm gonna have to think hard about things that waste my time or that needlessly consume time because I only thought I had a whole lot of time because I wasn't taking good care of myself back home in the United States. Anyway, so some thoughts for what to do when I get home, especially not allow all my stuff to weigh me down. Though I still can't believe I had a lot of fragile art. I'm an artist. I was working with Bismuth. My roommate and I had disagreed over what could have been trivial things, but all the banter of him asking me to leave got the better of me. And so I don't think he fully understands the gravity. When he asked me to leave, it's not just that, right? I don't know. I need to make up some differences with him when I get home anyway. Maybe I'll talk it over with him. All my art made it out there safely anyhow now, but at the time it weighed heavily on me. If I didn't have all that stuff in there, I could have been a lot more rational with him. Just like my other roommate here in Taiwan, I had a roommate who was Japanese, and I had accidentally put my stuff over his shoes. He couldn't find his shoes, and he was upset, and he wouldn't let it go. And it doesn't help that he doesn't speak good English, and misunderstandings and all that. But you know what? With the option of being able to just walk out of the hostel, oh, everything was so beautiful. I could actually make things good with him. Eventually, there was another roommate who was Japanese and understood Chinese as well. I was able to talk through him, so it was all good. It was all good. I didn't have the bandwidth to do that with my roommate back home in Arizona because my stuff held me down. So think of it the next time you go on vacation or the next time you move somewhere within your city. Think about it this way: every piece of luggage or item that you bring into the new place acts like an anchor to weigh you down, right? You gotta drag, and every time you run into a rip wave, it's gonna be harder to push through it, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.